Hey, what's going on, guys? June here with Hapa英会話, and joining me today is Sarah. What's going on, Sarah? How you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
So, Sarah, today I want to talk about a pretty simple expression, but I guess depending on context and also how you say it, it might have a different meaning, or people might take it a different way. And that expression today is excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. So excuse me, right? 日本語で言うとすみませんだよね。Sarah の場合、excuse me って聞いて、what's the first thing that comes to your head? Like what's the situation when you hear excuse me? 何を思い浮かぶ? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
まずは、excuse me, if someone bumps into you, すみませんみたい。すみません, excuse me, something like that. You know, you're passing someone and you bump them with your bag or something like that. Oh, excuse me. And, you know, maybe you say it when someone bumps into you. Oh, excuse me. Or if you bump into someone, you know, I think it can be a response either way.
Right. So, yeah, bumping into someone, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind for me too. 誰かにね、こう、ぶつかってしまったとき、すいません, right? Excuse me, right? I think that's the first thing that comes to mind for me as well. Is there another situation, 他に excuse me を言う状況なんかある?
I would say I can think of like 3 other ways, and one would be also very similar to like the typical すみません is if you're trying to get through, maybe there's people waiting in line at Starbucks and you want to get out, you know, and the door's on the other side of that line, you just say, oh, excuse me, and, you know, cut through that line so you can get out. So when you're squeezing through people, maybe just to tell them, I'm coming into your space. And I think that's very, you know, understandably sort of the same as すみません when you're trying to get through to the doors off the train.
Yeah. You live in Japan right now, right, Sarah?
I do, yeah.
So this is something that I kind of noticed, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like in the United States, when you're like trying to get through like a crowded area or getting through people, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's common courtesy to say, excuse me, right?
Right, yeah.
Instead of like trying to sneak around them. But 日本ってたまに言わない時があるような気がするんだよね。アメリカ人ほどこう狭い場所に入ろうとするときに、すいませんって言う人もたくさんいるけど、言わない人も多いんじゃないかなって、特にアメリカと比べたらあるような気がするんだけど、どう、セイラの経験は？
本当に電車に間に合わない時とか、すごく焦っている時、言わない方もいるけど、そんなに焦っていない時、すみませんは特に使うかもしれないです。
You know what's really funny? I gotta stop you there for a quick second. I know that you've been living in Japan for way too long because like your excuse me is this this gesture right here, which I think is like very Japanese.
I know. Even when I was saying excuse me, I was like, I totally wouldn't do that gesture in America. I just say like, excuse me, you know, and like try to get through. But yes, you can tell.
This is a very Japanese gesture, right? No, I think you bring up a good point. I think because I'm also from Los Angeles, where it's not as crowded, you're not always faced with the situation where you're trying to weave through people as to like when you're in Tokyo, for example, and you're constantly trying to like get through people. You know, you might find yourself saying like すみません like all day long.
All the time.
So I guess in that sense, it makes sense that you don't hear it as much as you do maybe here in LA. So まあ日本はやっぱ、ね、東京混んでるからね。やっぱどうしても sometimes you just don't notice. 気づかない時もあるからね. Like that you bumped into someone.
That's right.
Constantly brushing shoulders with people, right?
That's right.
Got
and
it.
Then I think I probably have like 2 other ways that I would use excuse me. One would be, and I'm a music teacher, so I'm very hard of hearing sometimes. So if somebody says something and I don't hear it correctly, I'll go, excuse me? Like, what did you say? Say it one more time. And that's just, you know, polite way to say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Or maybe if you were on your phone, I wasn't paying attention.
Yep. It could go both ways right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
but that's a very simple way of letting somebody know, すいません、聞き取れませんでした。もう一回言ってくれますか? Just by saying, excuse me, that whole like context is understood by the other person, right? Is could you repeat what you said one more time, right?
And sometimes somebody's talking to you and you don't notice that they're talking to you. Maybe there's a stranger on the street and they're trying to tell you something and you go, oh, excuse me, what did you say? You know, just because you were lost in your own world.
Right.
So I absolutely see that happening. And then the last one is kind of a funny one, but it would be more like, excuse me, what did you just say? And I definitely hear this from maybe more women than men, but it's kind of one of those like, maybe try that one more time. I didn't like what you said. Let's rewind a little bit. Especially in relationships, I'll hear, you know, someone say, excuse me, you know, if someone says, oh, you know, like that dress kind of makes you look a little round. Someone might say, excuse me?
That's a great example right there, right? So usually like excuse me is kind of like an alternative for like maybe sorry, but in that situation, when somebody says something rude to you, you're kind of like, hold on, what did you say? Kind of thing, right? Yeah. 何言ったの今みたいな。なんかちょっとキレてる、ちょっと怒ってる。Like you're definitely not happy when you say it. And the key thing here is the way you say it, right? I think like when you bump into someone, it's like, oh, excuse me. But when somebody says something maybe rude, you're like, excuse me, right? It kind of there's a little bit of a different tone to that, right?
Definitely. And not just how you say it, but it also so much depends on your facial expression. Like, excuse me? You know, you kind of got the eyebrows going up like, whoa, wait a second. Let's rewind, you know, think about that one more time. And as like a teacher, sometimes I hear students say something that maybe they shouldn't, and I will give them one more chance. Excuse me? You know, and they'll say, oh, nope, didn't mean to say that. Just kidding.
Yep. Yeah. And a classroom setting is like a great example too, right? You know, here in the United States too, right? When you get to maybe middle school, high school, sometimes, you know, a student might throw in a cuss word here and there, right? You're not supposed to use vulgar language. And then when you hear it, you're like, excuse me, right? And then kind of let the student know, you're not supposed to be saying that in here. Other ones I can think of is how about like when you sneeze or like when you maybe burp for example.
Yeah, absolutely. You're sitting especially at like a table and you're eating with a bunch of people. You just suddenly have like either like a hiccup or you burp by accident or you sneeze, you know, you might just say like, oh, excuse me. And especially when you're with company that is not your family, I would say absolutely say excuse me. If you don't say anything, it's kind of ちょっと失礼。
失礼ね、失礼だし、やっぱちょっと下品かもしれないよね。何も言わないのは。だからしゃっくりとか、あとゲップとか、もしかしたらくしゃみとかした後に、まあアメリカのマナーとしては。Oh, excuse me っていうよね。それあるよね。確かに。There's also one more that I want to just talk before we end our video today. When you want to, okay, so let's talk about that setting. 例えばね、夕食行ったとか、ミーティングにいる。Let's say you're at a meeting or you're at a dinner meeting with somebody and you want to excuse yourself. Would you like how would you say that? Let's say, for example, you need to leave the meeting, you have to leave the dinner table. Would you say like, excuse me in that situation? How would you use excuse in that situation?
I think it depends on your age. Because if you're a child and you want to be excused because you're done eating and you want to go play, you know, outside or something, you would ask, may I be excused or can I be excused? And that's very typical manners, I would say. But if you're in a meeting and you're an adult or you're at a table and you got to take a phone call, but everybody's still eating, I would say, can you excuse me? Or just, oh, excuse me. And then you kind of go out with the phone and they understand from context. But I would say in a meeting, definitely you can ask like, oh, can you excuse me a second? I'll be right back.
Yeah. Great examples again right there. やっぱ子供もそうだよね。だから夕食を食べているときにお父さんお母さんに食べ終わった後に行ってもいいですか、ゲームしにも行ってさ、can I excuse myself? It's like a very proper way of saying. Same with the dinner thing. If everybody's having a conversation, you get like a call and you have to take it very quickly. You could just say, excuse me, and just leave. なんかそのね、電話かかってきたときにね、夕食の場だったらそこで電話かかってきて、あ、すいません、ちょっと出ます。excuse me ということで大丈夫ですね。
もっと丁寧なバージョンは、can you excuse me? And, but sometimes like you have a phone call coming in, you really don't have the time. You're just like, oh, excuse me. And duck out.
And I guess that also kind of reminds me of like, let's say it's me, you, and another person. Let's just say, for example, like I'm the boss and then you are like one of the workers and have another worker in here. And I will say, Sarah, can you excuse us for a second? Which would imply that Sarah, I need you to leave this room right now, right?
Yeah. And that definitely has sort of the connotation of like, I need to have a talk with just this person. And either you aren't supposed to be a part of this conversation or it's rather serious. And so maybe if you're the worker who's staying, you might be a little bit scared.
What does you want to talk to me about? Yeah. So that's like a pretty formal way of saying like, I need to talk to you. Please leave this room. Could you excuse us for a moment?
Yeah.Absolutely.
やっぱいっぱいあるね。excuse me, excuse ってね。やっぱパッと思うのがね、こうぶつかって、あ、すいません、excuse me だけど、やっぱ状況によってね、so many different ways to use a excuse, seems like.
そう、言い方はすごく大事。そして、まあ、ちょっとフェイシャルエクスプレッションはすごく大事、それでも。
そうだね、そういうことだね。Exactly. まあ本当に言い方、フェイシャルエクスプレッションすべてね、まあ一番やっぱ気をつけないといけないのが、このExcuse me? これはね、もう気をつけないといけないね。All right, that was our conversation about excuse me today. Sarah, thank you very much for joining me today. That was a lot of fun. And to everyone watching this video, if you guys are interested, Sarah is a tutor on Cafe Talk. She provides amazing lessons. All of her information is in the description below, or you guys can go to cafetalk.com and look up Sarah. She'll come right up to the top. Alrighty, Sarah. Well, thank you very much.
Awesome.
I hope to have you back again for another video.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.